You may have seen all these model railroaders with 3D printers and said, hey, I really want to try that. It looks like they're doing some cool stuff, but how do I do that? How do I get it from these websites that have it to a physical model that I can put on my layout? Well, today we're going to talk about that. Plus, I'm going to answer some more of your questions. Hey, everybody, my name's Jimmy. I'm drinking some local coffee today, and this is Coffee and Trains.
This video is brought to you with support from my patrons on Patreon. These videos would not be possible without them, and if you'd like to join the Patreon community, you can follow the link in the description below and join for as little as $1 a month.
We're going to get right into the questions, and the first question up is from Trackside Rail Productions, and they say that they have a lot of open space on their layout. Do they have any suggestions of what to do? The track is all done, and they're just finishing the town. There's too much open space. Also, do you have some tips for painting building kits? Thanks. So I'll address the first question first by actually referencing another YouTube channel that's been one of my favorites for the past several years, and that's Oregon Joint Line. I really love the videos. He's got a nice little sense of humor that goes along with showing his operations, and he's got a fairly prototypical operation. It's a massive in-scale layout modeling the Pacific Northwest, but he has a big section of the layout that is just open scenery. And he said it actually took some discipline to model it, but once he did it, it looks really, really good, and it looks realistic, like an area that a train is running through. And especially when you get out west, you have a lot of open space that trains run through. So don't be afraid to have some scenery on your layout that's just natural, that the trains run through. So my advice is, if you don't want to put a building or anything there, like a gas station, or you've already got all your industry set up, is to just do some natural scenery. It looks really, really good, and I love watching trains run through scenery personally, and I think it'll add something to your layout that you may have been missing. So adding some scenery, whether it's trees, whether it's a rock face or a hillside, or maybe even a tunnel, that could be something that you could put in that space. Now, in terms of building kits, first of all, I like separating out all the parts when I'm painting a building kit. So I paint as many of the parts separately as I can. Then obviously when you get it together, you have to do some detail painting. And when I do really good detail painting, where I'm doing really detailed work, I'll have a little sandbag or a mouse pad hand rest underneath me that'll just kind of take the stress off. And I also use the proper brushes. I actually like stiffer bristle brushes when I'm painting. It gives me a little bit more control for the way that I paint. But there's some tips for painting your building kits. Thank you so much, Trackside Rail Productions. Up next, we have Peter Minigan, who's asking me a different question about 3D printing. So he says that, have you considered putting your designs on a web sharing service site that allows for charging? And this is a bit complicated for me, because I do sell I print models to sell on Etsy, so physical models that you can buy. But what I do with my models that I custom design a lot of times is I put them up for my patrons. At the $5 a month level on my Patreon, you get a model of the month that you can download and print yourself. And this is typically what I do. I'm not going to 100% rule out this, especially for the models that I sell on Etsy, but it's definitely something that I would ask, and if they were okay with it first. And if they weren't, then I wouldn't do it, because that is a perk that I offer to them. So thank you, Peter, for asking that question. Before we get into a few other questions, let's talk about some of the coffees that you guys are drinking. Peter George says that he lives in the UK and he's enjoying tea and trains. Nothing wrong with that. I love me a good cup of Earl Grey from time to time. Sam Dickerson says he's not a big coffee drinker, but he is drinking Dunkin' Donuts Original Blend with 2 shots of M&M's creamer, which is really good if you haven't tried it, and a shot of sweet Italian cream. So that is some sweet coffee, and I bet it is really good. And RV Adventures in Arkansas says that they're having Pete's Major Dickinson Dark Roast Black with nothing added. I do love me some Pete's coffee as well. I have it a surprisingly fair amount in the morning. So thank you guys so much for sending those coffees in. If you want to tell me what coffee you are drinking, you can put that in the comments below. Let's go on to our next question, which is from Andy Crawford. He says, off topic, if I can talk, guys. That's a little bit of fun right there. But off topic, I am guessing you have a family. Do they get access to your layout and get to operate it? Well, yes, I do have a family. I have a lovely wife and 2 twin toddlers, boy-girl toddlers. And they are a little bit young right now to operate a layout. Right now, anytime they see it, they want to run in and grab the trains and play with them like they're some of the rough and tumble toddler toys. So they're a little bit young to play with it, but that's literally the only thing that's keeping me from letting them play with it. Once they get older and they can understand, then by all means, fair game, we're going to be playing with this. So now my wife, on the other hand, she's really supportive of the YouTube channel. She really likes what I'm doing. She thinks it's really great, but she also just has no interest in model trains, which is completely fair. And she just really doesn't have any desire. Now, when the kids start playing with the trains, that might change. I don't know. So that is something that is to be seen. All right. So last question is Chris Bell. And he says, could I do a tutorial on printing from Thingiverse or a free sharing STL site? Well, I'm actually going to do that right now. So let's go ahead and cut to the video.
We begin by going to a STL sharing website like Thingiverse, which I have right here, and basically you just want to go in and find models that you want. So you have to search them. So I'm going to type in scale trains and see what comes up. And you can see there's quite a few things that come up here. You can see a water tower, a bridge, a little station platform, all sorts of different things. So I'm going to download a couple of different models to demonstrate resin printing setup and then filament printing setup. I'm going to download this bridge right here, and then I'm also going to download this 20-foot shipping container. Once you found your model, go ahead and download it. It's really going to depend on which website you're using to how you download it, but it should be a simple download link. You'll get that file, and then you need to put it in a program called a slicer, which basically makes a file that tells the printer what to do on each layer of the print. Slices up the model into different layers, hence the name slicer. I'm going to be using Prusa Slicer for this particular model, showing you how to do filament printers. There's also Ultimaker Cura that you can use to do your prints. Now I'm just going to drag and drop the model right in here. One thing you want to make sure is that you have the proper printer selected in your print profile so that it writes the proper code for the printer to understand. And I'm going to try to link a good tutorial for that in the description below as well as right up here. Now you can see that I have my model right here. I just dragged and dropped it in, and then I selected supports. I went ahead and said that I need supports everywhere. I like to use auto supports with Prusa, but sometimes I'll have to put manual supports in. Then I'll click the slice button, and this basically slices the model into all those layers. And you can see it's also auto-generated those supports. That's what those green parts are right there. So it's made the support so that it can print properly. And then I click export G-code and save the model. And then I put it on a flash drive or an SD card, whatever my printer accepts for its files. Then I can take it, find it in my printer, and click start. Now, this is for filament printers. Let's talk about resin printers. Now, for resin printers, there's a couple different slicers. There's Lychee, there's Chitu Box, which I'm using right here. Those are two of the most common ones. And what I have right here is Chitu Box for my Elgu Mars 2. Now, same thing as always, I just drag and drop the file in there. And resin 3D printers are a little bit different because they actually print upside down and pull the model out of a resin vat. So one thing that I like to do is you got to kind of have a reverse thinking. So one tip that I always do is I tilt my model a certain number of degrees. This will take the stress off of each layer as it cures until you have really strong layers that it can bond to. Then I'll take it into supports and I will support it the entire way through, and I'll usually do auto generate. And then I like to sure up the corners of my model so you can see that I'm putting my some additional supports on some corners. And again, there's plenty of tutorials out there on how to use Chitu Box and all these other slicers. I'll try to link a bunch of them in the description below. But once that is done, I can do all sorts of things. This is one thing that's really cool about 3D printing. So I'm actually going to try to see how many models that I can fit on this build plate. So it turns out that I can actually get 9 models on this build plate, which is pretty good for this configuration. Now, what I'm doing to make more of them is I'm literally just copy pasting, and that makes it pretty simple. So the next thing I got to do, I make sure everything's okay, nothing's hanging out the build plate, and I go ahead and slice my model. Now, the slicing process is a little bit different with a resin printer. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you have your printer selected because resin printers are all different. So you want to make sure that you have the proper code that you're going to write onto that file to print this out. So I sliced the model. Resin printers are going to do all the layer at the same time, so it doesn't matter how long or wide the layer is or the model is, the height is going to govern the time. So you can see that this model is going to take 2 hours and 19 minutes, and I can actually zoom through and see everything here. By the way, all of these, I'm going to try to find some good tutorials for these slicers so that you can check them out. Then I'll just save the file to a flash drive or a SD card, whatever the printer takes, and then plug it into the printer and get it going. And that is how you take a file from Tinkercad or any other website and set it up.
So there you go, Chris. Thingiverse is a really great place to get models, especially if you're starting out with 3D printing and model trains. There's quite a few on there. That's where I started by getting models for model railroading. It's a really great resource. Now, if you have questions like this one or the other ones that I answered, leave them in the comments below and I might answer them next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.